Ferruccio Lamborghini was an Italian automobile designer and prisoner of war during World War II. When he came back to Italy, he opened a small garage and converted military equipment into farming tractors. His timely venture turned him into a millionaire. And later, the inventor...
Even when you feel low, you can still go. Even when you feel slow, you can still go. Even when there's no hope, you can still go. I never answer to no, man, I still go. Go, 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 yo, go, go, go. Hustle hard, hustle every single day. I'll be making moves till I'm buried in my grave. To the system, I don't wanna...
In the rural town of Renzano, in northern Italy. Ferruccio's parents grew grapes to make wine for a living and raised him among their vineyards. They taught him to roll up his sleeves and have the drive to make quality wine. However, Ferruccio had other things in mind. He was more interested in fixing their tractors than learning how to manage the farm. At the time, it was considered risky to stray from the family's business, and his parents were clearly disappointed. Still, Ferruccio chose to explore his passion and studied mechanics at the Fratelli Taddea Technical Institute, and once he graduated, he never looked back. He started training with a master blacksmith who shared all of his ironworking and welding secrets. But it wasn't enough to impress a factory worker that he had his eyes set on, Cavaliere Righi in Bologna. Headstrong and stubborn, Ferruccio managed to convince the factory owner to hire him. When he turned 18, he left and returned to his hometown, Renzano, where he opened a workshop with his childhood friend, Marino Filippini. However, things took a turn for the worse when World War II hit. During the Second World War, Ferruccio was torn away from his carefree life. He was drafted by the Royal Italian Air Force and was assigned to work as a mechanic with other Italians at the garrison in Rhode Island, Greece. 3 years later, the German forces took over the garrison and evicted the Italians. Ferruccio decided to stay and asked the Germans for permission to open his own workshop. 2 years later, however, the Allied forces arrived. They took everyone in the garrison as prisoners, including Ferruccio. When they discovered Ferruccio's technical aptitude, they got him to work on fixing their vehicles, and 1 year later, he was finally allowed to leave. Ferruccio's early years back home from the war were far filled with greed. His wife, Clelia, passed away while giving birth to their only child, Tonio. Afterwards, Ferruccio kept himself busy at his workshop, where he mostly fixed pre-war vehicles, lorries, and tractors. One day, however, he received an interesting request from his father that changed the course of his life. "I need a new tractor," Ferruccio's father requested. It was then that Ferruccio was struck with a realization. Italy desperately needed to increase its agricultural production to recover from the war. But for that to be possible, Italy needed better equipment. Armed with experience in working with war vehicles, Ferruccio bought leftover military equipment and used them to make new tractors. They were built with an old British Morris engine and modified to run on cheap diesel instead of expensive petrol. They were said to be more affordable and innovative than anything anyone had seen before. Later, Ferruccio started a new company called Lamborghini Tractors. While his tractors were in demand, he needed more capital for production. With a newfound faith in his son, Ferruccio's father used his farm as collateral for a loan. The risk Ferruccio and his father took paid in more ways than both of them could have imagined. Soon after, the company became one of the largest manufacturers of tractors in Italy. Ferruccio celebrated his success with good food, fine wine, and fast cars. He even started to collect luxury cars like Jaguars, Mercedes, Maseratis, and Ferraris. But none of them completely satisfied him. He was particularly disappointed with his Ferrari 250 GT since the clutch would always break down. One day, He brought the Ferrari to his mechanic for repairs and discovered that the clutch was identical to the one fitted into one of his tractors. This did not sit well with him since he paid €10 for the clutch on his tractor and paid Ferrari €1,000 for the same part on the car. Later, he decided to tell Ferrari about the imperfections he found in his cars. Along with the clutches needing frequent repairs, they were considered too noisy and rough on the road. Enzo Ferrari brushed Ferruccio off and insisted the problem wasn't with the car, but with him. "You're a tractor driver, a farmer. You shouldn't complain about my cars. They're the best in the world." Lamborghini told him, "Oh yes, I am a farmer. I'll show you how to make a sports car, and I'll do a sports car by myself to show you how a sports car has to be." That day, Ferruccio went home determined to prove what he was capable of. He hired 3 of Ferrari's ex-employees and bought a large plot of land to build a factory. In just 9 months, Ferruccio completed his first sports car featuring his astrological sign as the emblem, the Lamborghini 350 GT. It was considered a technical masterpiece and included a V12 engine, 5-speed transmission, 4-wheel disc brakes, and 4-wheel independent suspension. It was unveiled for the first time at the Turin Motor Show and praised by customers and critics. Ferruccio proved to Enzo and his doubters that he wasn't just a farmer, but also a mechanical genius capable of building superior cars. It was a sophisticated car that had a lot of class and was easy to operate. Over the next few years, Ferruccio's tractor and sports car business flourished. When it came to designing new models, Ferruccio gave his engineers the freedom to experiment. This leadership style led to his team building the 400 GT and another secret project, the Miura P400. It was developed as a street race car and was the first in history to be made with a rear mid-engine layout. It was kept secret from Ferruccio since he was against the idea of building race cars. Several years before, he entered a prestigious race and crashed into the side of a restaurant. However, when Ferruccio found out, he decided not to scrap the idea, and it turned out to be one of the best decisions he ever made. The Miura became known as the world's first supercar, and its rear mid-engine layout became the standard for all high-performance cars. From then on, Lamborghini Trattori continued its successful streak and debuted more celebrated models: the Espada, the Isolero, the Gemera, the Uraco, and the Countach. These were said to be superior to other sports cars since all of their parts were custom-made. Unfortunately, Ferruccio's success came to a halt after facing a series of events beyond his control. A deal to supply Bolivia with 5,000 tractors was canceled after the country faced a coup. The loss forced Ferruccio to sell his tractor company and 51% of his Automobili Lamborghini shares. Later, the global stock market experienced a dramatic crash, and the OPEC started an oil embargo. It led to increased fuel prices and threw the automotive industry into a crisis. Ferruccio did his best to keep his business alive and managed to find buyers for his unsold tractors, after which he decided to retire early and sold the remaining 49% of the shares of his company. The new owners of Automobili Lamborghini tried their best to revive its brand but failed, and afterwards, the company was forced into liquidation. A few years later, the Italian government sold it for $3 million to 2 French billionaires. They hoped to renovate the old Lamborghini facilities and hire new engineers, but quickly ran out of money and sold the company to Chrysler. Chrysler made plans to import the brand to the U.S., but failed to make a profit, so they sold the company to an Indonesian conglomerate. While they had more luck in making sales, it wasn't enough to weather the financial crisis in Asia. It was then that Audi bought the company and recognized the need for greater attention to processes and product quality. Under their leadership, the company Lamborghini was finally able to take back its place in the market in the 21st century. With the release of the Gallardo, Huracan, and Ursus SUV concept, sales jumped across the world, especially in the US. In 2019, Lamborghini reported record sales and today is valued at $11 billion. This is the story of how a farmer and a prisoner of war turned his tractor business into a sports car empire. For more inspiring stories and advice from today's most successful leaders, don't forget to subscribe to our channel.